Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. How are you doing, beautiful? How's it going today? My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now this week we have a lot to cover. We have 6 characters that we're going to be talking about in today's video over the course of just 2 events. So we've got a lot to cover, and as I said before, next week I will not be here to do a lot of this content, so I will be going over all of Zack's banner, all the stuff that comes with Ramza, Sid Rain's event as well, which obviously contains Steiner. We've got Rydia to talk about, Trey to talk about, lots to go over today. So if all that stuff is stuff that you're interested in, then as always, stay tuned and keep on watching. Now before we get started on all of that stuff, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, including my Twitch, where we've just finished Stranger of Paradise, which is pretty fantastic. I really loved it. If you'd like to know more about that game, then I have posted a video review about it, and I do plan to continue to play it on stream because I'm gunning for that platinum trophy, so it'd be lovely to see you on there. I do also cover Dissidia Opera Omnia events as they come out, although next week I will not be missing. I will be missing out on Divine Leviathan and Steiner, though what I may end up doing, because I'm kind of detoxing away from all of it, is I may end up not playing Dissidia at all through that period. So we might find that I come back and just blitz the whole thing when I come back on the Friday. It might be fun to just go through everything all at once. So fingers crossed, and we'll see how that goes. Don't forget to check out my Patreon as well, which is my members only website, where you can get lots of exclusive content, some chats with me, we take part in Would You Pull, all sorts of other stuff, and of course get a title card made just for you over at the credits of each of my videos. And I do always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video, and today that person is going to be Thinking Demon, who rather appropriately to us just having finished Stranger of Paradise has Chaos as their patron card. So a massive thank you goes out to you and everybody else. And last but not least, do not forget to check out all of the other content creators and resources out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia, including the Tonbury Troop for their fabulous infographics, Dissidia DB, Dissidia Compendium, and DissidiaInfo.com for all of the resources that we use from this channel very regularly, and of course Leo, Bob, and Mediu over on Reddit for their wonderful translations, because without them, I'd struggle to read what was going on. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at some of these banners. Now we have 3 banners to cover in today's video, so we're going to go by them one by one. And the first one that we're going to talk about here is going to contain Trey LD, Ramza's returning BT as well, and then Barrett's also along for the ride too. So as we can see here, Trey gets a rework here, he gets his C90 as well. Nothing particularly spectacularly unique coming from this, but he gets increased HP dump counts across all of his skills, as well as the firewall trap itself, so you get double HP dumps on that, so that's going to be pretty fabulous. If you've used Trey before, he likes to do a lot of off-turn damage very regularly, and his C90 definitely helps him do that. And the arrow shower now deals full AoE HP damage instead of split damage, so if you're against multiple targets, you'll notice that this actually adds up very quickly and is quite an extension to his kit. His C90 basically makes it so he gets more HP dumps on his EX. His first turn now is a free turn as well, so you can set up Grand Delta before you then go off into setting up his firewalls or whatever you want to do with that. And he just gets a lot more damage out of it by way of adding weakness damage through his accurate arrow debuff or buff, which is the same one that allows him to instant break anything that he hits. So Trey actually gets quite a lot out of his C90 and his just plain rework. He doesn't need any new toys. It's nice to see him come around, especially seeing as we're getting a lot of off-turn damage dealers coming about of late, the likes of Rem, with like Garnet obviously still being such a big thing, and anything that can make his damage that much higher, especially somebody like Garnet, is going to make him significantly better. Then skipping along to Ramza. Now, Ramza is actually really simple with his rework. It's actually, like, it doesn't add much in the way of uniqueness, but what it does add is huge. So Ramza, if you've not used him already, he's been around for a very long time, is specifically known for his capabilities as a buff bot or an aura bot. He, just by standing there, he adds a large amount of buffs, attack stats, all of this stuff, and his BT did more of the same by adding stats depending on how many buffs you had across your party. Well, his rework adds hit counts to Shout and to his LD, which means that he's getting multiple HP dumps on Shout, which is also an instant break move, which is fantastic. And then Ice Brand Storming Winter is also a delaying launch attack, which means that you're getting an extra turn of delay on that as well, whilst also getting bravery damage, HP damage, and overflow percentile increases for the party as well. His C90 is nothing to sniff at, let me tell you. Now, this looks like a lot on text, but it's actually a lot more simple than you'd think. So, he gets the typical, his stats go up while his EX passive is equipped from it, and Innovate plus, and the bravery and HP attacks that are associated with it are based on the number of buffs or the number of times he's used Shout and or Innovate in order to be able to get his pep buff to level 3. You can also do this through using his LD, because it buffs both of his moves. Innovate plus does 6 HP dumps, which is rather a lot, while also inflicting a framed debuff on the enemy, which nowadays is nothing fantastic, but it's still a framed debuff that lowers multiple stats, so attack, defense, and speed, and batteries the party pretty heavily each time he does it, and it's very fast charging. But one of the big things about Ramza was his HP plus, which was a brave HP attack that didn't add to the turn count. Well, now that doesn't add to the turn count and does 4 HP dumps while you're at it, which is pretty ridiculous for a free turn. And you're just churning out damage, no problems. He was always very big at helping keep turn counts down when that was more of an issue than it is nowadays. But as you can see here, it's just icing on the cake at this point. His BT does something, as well as Zack actually, that we haven't really seen very much of so far in the game, in that it adds both bravery damage cap and HP damage cap. And Ramza does quite a lot of it as well. Bear in mind that he's also giving attack max bravery and initial bravery as well up per buff, and now he's adding max bravery and HP damage cap up as well, up to a total of 36%. His Leviathan armor also adds 15% party-wide HP damage cap, which in total adds up to a ridiculous 51% HP damage cap. We've seen how powerful HP damage caps are with the likes of Garnet, with the likes of any character with blue Leviathan armor and a BT effect going off at the time for that character. But we've not seen anything quite this large in terms of HP damage cap all in one place. And all Ramza has to do is stand there, and that's kind of the beauty of him. So if you have Ramza, just green him. You will not regret it. He does so much in that little package that you would not believe. So now let's take a look at the event of the Divine Leviathan event banner that everyone's looking forward to, which is going to contain Zack's brand new BT, the return of his LD and the rest of his kit, as well as Rydia and her brand new LD as well. Now, Rydia in this game is one that I honestly I don't really like Rydia in Dissidia Opera Omnia, to be honest, because she's just not very representative of her character in FF4. I find she's a very bland character in this game. But her LD definitely helps her a little bit and carve out a bit of a niche for herself, because currently she's a Water Imperil Enchanter with her EX+. I did use it for a long while for reasons, but I don't like her particularly in this game, so it's nice to see that she does carve herself out a bit more of a niche. Her rework just adds HP damage and counts and changes the timing of her water resist down on her summon Leviathan so that it, like the rest of her attack, can trigger off of it. Her C90 is quite nice because it adds the effect that it adds the effect for her to be able to use less bravery in each of her HP attacks, which is similar to what Irawa has in her ability, but it also just adds some extra HP dumps while also inflicting the water resist down and subjugating strength, which is the water imperil. And then taking a look at her LD. Now, Rydia's LD grants Mother's Dragon. It has multiple HP dumps in there, of course. It has 4 HP dumps. It grants Mother's Dragon, which is attack, HP, and max Brave Overflow up for the party and some more for her. So it's a nice party-wide offensive buff that goes with her Water Enchant Imperil. It also grants Blink, which is 3 turns. It's a framed buff that doesn't have a timer on it. So it will evade, each of your party members will evade the next 3 attacks that come for them. So kind of like Edge, which is also a little bit sad because it's a little bit of a shame that like she's kind of stolen his niche, but it is restricted to her LD and it's not an EX, so it's not something that she can use repeatedly. She does get 4 uses of it though. And it also puts an imperil on the enemies, which is water weak rather than water resist down, so water imperil, which means that even enemies that absorb water will take the weakness damage, so you can bypass that. Now, when I first looked at this, I was like, oh, hold on a minute. I wasn't all that interested in this before, but Garnet is a thing. Maybe I can make use of this with Garnet. However, having spoken to some JP players and things like that, I've noticed that there really isn't very much use for this particular debuff. Like, there's no real application for it, because no enemy, as far as I know, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, really absorbs water damage that you would need Rydia for. So therefore, you could just take Garnet and not worry about it. The thing with, like, she's definitely a victim of Garnet's existence, but she does have that blink, which does keep her uniqueness a little bit different from the likes of Garnet. So if you're using off-turn damage dealers that don't need to be hit, like Beatrix or Auron, then you might get some use out of this, and team building with her may well actually be really fun. I did want to point out her call ability as well, because her call ability does inflict water weakness to the enemies. That's why I kind of thought, oh, Garnet with Rydia cool, that might be really good. And it also actually gives you the blink status for the party as well, and you get a buff to your attack, max bravery, overflow, and HP damage up for the party as well. So it does quite a lot in a nice little package, but realistically, I think that Rydia is very much a superfluous character. There aren't very many situations in which you need to use her, particularly on the back of who's on the banner with her, which is Zack. So Zack doesn't get an awful lot out of his rework or anything. He only gets his LD reworked, but realistically, with his LD came out, he got a rework to his skill 1 and 2 that really significantly increased his damage. And his LD, the only problem I had with it has now been fixed, in that you now start with his buff that gives him party, or gives the party regen, HP, brave damage mitigation, HP damage mitigation, more defenses, and it makes Zack's damage go up. Well, now he starts with it, so you can now kind of get the level ups on there by him taking damage much quicker, and you only need to use his LD to refresh it. So he gets 3 HP dumps out of this, so which is much, much nicer. And then his C90 makes his Apocalypse attack do 5 HP dumps as well. You now start with Apocalypse, which is pretty fantastic, and it now lasts for longer as well. Now, the reason that people want Zack is his BT. Now, Zack's BT is pretty crazy. So, anyone who likes Crisis Core is going to love, like, the Price of Freedom playing in the background, and the actual attack itself, it might pull on the heartstrings a little bit, but the actual effect that comes from it gives him Barsh's ability where any AoE damage is redirected to him. It gives him Arden's ability where he can't really be KO'd because he just stays at 0 HP. He extends his EX Bravery Shield to the other party members so that they're not able to take damage as long as it's less than 150% of Zack's initial bravery. You're also getting party brave damage up, party HP damage up, and party brave damage cap up, and party max bravery cap, so HP damage cap up, all at once, whilst he's dealing loads of damage during his BT phase because his skills happen to do a lot of damage. It's good. It's really, really good. Bear in mind that he is a tank character. His skills lock the enemies onto him. He has HP regen in his kit. He's got defenses out of the wazoo. He's also churning out damage. The thing that's scary about this point in time is the combination of Zack and Ramza covering pretty much everything you would need. Then your third character slot can cover the Lufenia orb and you'll be fine. And if you're not really needing to do that, you just plop Garnet in there and see your HP damage cap soar. There's so much damage potential from these characters. This is kind of like the next level up when it comes to BT effects. Like, we obviously love BT effects anyway, but these two in particular have a lot to offer. And then the last banner that we have to talk about today is going to be coming up later on in the week, which is going to be Cid Rains's Lost Chapter. That is going to obviously contain Cid Rains's full kit. It's going to be another shot at getting Zack's BT, and we're also going to be getting Steiner's brand new LD and his rework as well. Now, Sid Reigns doesn't actually get a lot out of his Sid 90, but quite frankly, he doesn't really need to. He gets some additional stats, he gets some extra HP dumps, he gets some max Brave damage cap up for the party from his C65, which is now his C88, so that's kind of nice, but realistically, if you liked Sid Reigns before, you're going to still like him now. If you didn't like him before, you're probably not going to suddenly love him now. He doesn't get a huge amount here, but I will say he is one of the cool abilities I've actually used the most since he came out, because it's just such a fierce thing to put on a burst before you go off and just be launching every single turn without the need for somebody like Selfie in your party to inflict the Rapture debuff. However, with Selfie coming up with her C90, you might find you actually prefer that. So whether you want to pull for Sid Reigns, having not had him before, is up to you. But the chances are, if you've been playing the game for a long while, you probably already have him. So realistically, you're just going to be pulling here for Steiner. Now, Steiner gets a rework here where he pretty much just gets HP dumps added to all of his stuff, and the attack down duration gets extended on his power break, which also has 2 more skill uses. So nothing super fancy there. Like, you get a bit of battery out of it, you get your bit of like debuffs and stuff, but that's pretty much it. His C90 does help him quite a lot because he gets all the stat ups, he starts with his EX gauge filled out, and he starts with his own Chivalry buff, which means you're going to start with Spellblade Plus, which means you're not fanning about having to use Spellblade to get own Chivalry and use the rubbish version of his skills to get to the good ones. It's just a pain in the butt. You don't have to worry about any of that anymore. And Stock Break is a triple HP dump that has 100% AoE damage to all targets, and it adds the effects to his buff that he gets from that straight off the bat, where he also gets party attack, party max Brave overflow, and gained overflow. So it's just extending the buffs that he would have gotten to himself from the rest to the rest of the party. Remember a day when Steiner was just, I'm the guy that deals extra damage to human targets, and that never really worked? Well, now we don't have to worry about that being his only niche, because his LD gives him something that a lot of players probably find a little extra and unneeded, but it is kind of cool in its own way. So you get a single target Brave HP attack followed by 3 AoE Brave HP attacks that deal 100% AoE damage. You get a free skill use on the following turn, which is always nice, and you get this dirty great buff called Right Behind You Mister, which increases party defense by 100%, party Brave gains by 20%, party HP damage up by 20%, so that's gains and HP damage resist, party HP regen, so big defensive boost, very similar to Beatrix, but actually quite consolidated into very few buffs, so you might find you might be actually be able to use those two together and it worked really well for the shippers out there. And then the thing that you get that's unique to Steiner, but isn't hugely unique, because it's not the first time we've seen something like this, is you get a full party Brave regen by 50% of Steiner's max bravery every time a turn passes, whether it's yours or your opponent's. I quite like this kind of effect because there's a lot of times where I'll use, certainly with launch teams, if I do use, say, Sid Reigns as I'm going off for a kind of a launch composition using somebody like Cloud who doesn't battery when he launches, having something that gives what is essentially Brave refund every turn does add a lot of damage to it. But there are other effects like this. We have seen effects like Rosa, like Sarah, where you get Brave regens in differing ways over the course of time that essentially serve as refunds. So whether you feel you need this particular effect from Steiner is entirely up to you, but it is rare to see it in combination with HP damage, Brave gains, and all of these defensive buffs all at once. So it is interesting, if nothing else. So we have 2 events to talk about today to go with these events. The first of which is going to be Divine Leviathan, which we love Divine boards because they come with the boards that give us loads of resources, buttloads of tickets, buttloads of gems. You know the situation. And if you happen to get Ramza or Zack, or you already have Ramza, you're going to find this mission particularly easy. Divine Leviathan is more tedious than he is difficult. Certainly in comparison to like when we had Shiva or Ifrit, things like that, they weren't super, like they were kind of tricky. This one's more irritating than anything else. So it's a non-lethal orb, as has been par for the course with the Divine Summons. And as opposed to his orb like going down and you avoiding it, you're probably going to have to deal with it the majority of the time. unless you're taking a composition that is purely off-turn damage and evasion, where as his orb ticks up by taking less damage by effects or by evading an attack, he can actually cancel his orb if you get it high enough, up to 45. But once he's used his recast ability, which is essentially his Leviathan orb, he will then be unable to be broken for the rest of the fight, and after he does this at 90% HP and at 50% HP, he'll also summon 2 bubbles that can also not be broken and just do AoE HP attacks every time it's their turn. And also he has an aura which makes it so that any time a party member acts, they are delayed by 2 turns. This sounds really awkward. It sounds like it's a really difficult thing to deal with. However, if you've got characters that deal off-turn damage and then someone that can protect you, whether it be Zack or Layla is a very good one to deal with this in particular, if you've got access to her, because you'll dodge whatever Leviathan's doing and then not care about the aura, because then all your characters get pulled up. If you want to use Garnet, you can absolutely use Garnet. I try not to use Garnet nowadays because I don't think it's fair to recommend Garnet, because there are players that don't have her. So I try to recommend other teams instead. And at the moment, my eyes are going to kind of just blitzing Leviathan really hard by using a launch team that's consisting of something like Cloud, Ramza, Selfie, maybe Kais, or maybe using Rem somewhere in there as well, because Rem is just fabulous in everything apparently. So taking those kind of characters, you can absolutely just wreck Leviathan's health consistently from 100% to 0. As long as you're keeping an eye on those recast attacks, you'll probably find you'll be okay. And then of course we have Sid Reigns' Leviathan plus mission from his Lost chapter, which is going to bring back the growth plant from his mission. And if you remember his mission the first time around, it was a real pain in the backside if you didn't have Sid Reigns. Well, I'm pleased to say it's not nearly as bad this time round. Obviously, if you have Sid Reigns, it's going to be significantly easier for you than it was to begin with. But it's another non-lethal orb that you're probably just going to have to deal with, because the Leviathan orb only increases by 1 when a player recovers bravery, so bravery gen, and it decreases by 2 every time you take a turn. So it's only going to be slowed down by bravery gen. But the orb attack is just an AoE HP attack that cleanses debuffs. So if you're not really reliant on debuffs that badly, you should be pretty okay. And even if you're going in for a big burst phase, you can still set up all your debuffs before that and still probably be fine. After 70% and 30% HP, he puts up a green aura which gives him HP regen, which you have to knock off by getting rid of 200k damage or more in a single launch, which dispels it. He also starts the fight with his recast gauge up, which puts a red aura on him, which means that he has another shield on there, which has to be gotten rid of. It's a very big HP shield on there, and you have to get rid of this quickly, otherwise he's going to do a large attack that'll probably kill you. And he'll also put some nasty debuffs on you, like speed down, action to let turn rate up or turn rate down, that kind of thing, whereas basically you're just going to have to make sure that you're able to keep up with that. Or alternatively, you could bring somebody like Lena along who's not going to let those debuffs hit you in the first place. Again, I have just greened Cloud because I fancy this, so I'm getting my money's worth out of my Cloud at the moment, and I'm planning on probably using Sid Reigns himself because I've got him in my back pocket. Probably don't need to use him here. Could probably use somebody like Kais if I wanted to, or Ramza. Ramza would be fabulous for this because he has launch in his kit and hits like a truck. Cloud, for obvious reasons, launch damage, does a lot of damage, has delay in his kit, which is great for when the boss doesn't have their red aura up, because he frames his turns when they do, so you could use Quistis if you wanted to. And then I'll probably take Lena for her auras. Doesn't have a C90 quite yet, we have to wait for Laguna for that, but I reckon we can still make use of her for this. So again, just keep on top of those auras, making sure you're dealing a large amount of damage during launches preferably, and this will be easy too. So now we have the chance for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be known and tell everyone whether you would or wouldn't pull on any given banner and why that might be the case. So of all the 100+ people we asked, a massive thank you goes out to all of my patrons for casting their votes and their comments as always. We're going to go through each of these banners one by one, and then all of the comments are collective regarding all of the banners involved here. So starting with Zack and Rydia, this seems a bit split across the board, and I think this is obviously going to be influenced by the fact that some people, myself included, do already have Zack's LD. So 21% of people said they were going to use gems here, 41% of people said they were going to use 100 or more tickets, 28% of people said less than 100 tickets, and 10% of people said that they weren't bothering at all. Then going over to Ramza and Trey's banner. This one I think is largely because people who are, certainly people on my Patreon, have been a player of this game for quite some time, so a lot of people already have Ramza's kit because he's been out more than once. And 4% of people said they're going to use gems here, 4% of people said they're going to use 100 more tickets, nobody said less than 100 tickets, 7% of people said that they didn't want what was on this banner, and a whopping 86% of people said that they had everything here. I was in this latter camp as well. I've had Ramza. Ramza's one of these characters that's always done me very well, so I'm very pleased to be able to use him again here without having to pull on anything. Really looking forward to that. And then lastly, with Steiner and Sid Reigns' banner, 4% of people said they were using gems here, 14% of people said they were using 100 or more tickets, 43% of people said less than 100 tickets, and 39% of people said no thank you. And again, I think that Steiner is cool, but I don't think that he's ever really like, oh my god, I absolutely have to have him, so I wouldn't worry too much about missing out on him. And Sid Reigns is a character a lot of people already have. So let's go into some of these comments. Nalthian says, I'll use tickets on Zack and Rydia. I already have Zack LD, but I really want the BT. I definitely don't need him, but I regularly play tanks, so it'll be nice to have another tank with a BT besides Warrior of Light. As for Rydia, that's purely a love for an FF4 pull. Her kit still was mildly interesting with the blink, but I'm pretty loaded on magic damage users for now. With Ramza and Trey, however, it's going to be gems. I've missed Ramza every time he's been the top tier support in this game, and I'm giving a resounding not this time. No, Garnet doesn't make him irrelevant, absolutely. Yes, his damage cap up is huge, absolutely. He's missed his LD and BT the first time around, so I'll use gems here to give myself the best chance of not needing BT tokens. I already have Trey LD, and I'm excited to have him come back to the top of my roster. Steiner and Reigns is almost certainly a skip unless I'm overloaded on tickets and still chasing the green Zack. I've never played FF9 beyond the first couple of hours. I don't like Steiner's design, I hate his character behaviour. Yes, I recognise he's meant to be comic relief, but it falls flat with me. And I already have Reigns, there's no reason for me to go after him here. I mean, I like Steiner and obviously I love FF9. That's kind of the only reason that I'm going in on that banner, even slightly, but I so absolutely do not need Steiner. I don't really need anything on these banners, realistically. Like, Rydia did pique my interest, but now that I know kind of what's coming on the JP side, I'm less interested in her than I was before. But I will probably throw some tickets at them both because Divine Leviathan, and it's a chance for Zack. Because if I do pull Zack on a Zack BT off of anything, then it means that I can then BT token something else like Gilgamesh or Tidus. All the things that I keep saying I'm going to do and then end up not doing. So I need to give myself permission to do it, basically. Kellen says Zack and Rydia are getting gems, more so for Rydia than for Zack, since it may not have come up as often at all in JP. Since while it may not have come up as often at all in JP, being able to set resistances to weak is fantastic, and the evasion is another nifty feature that can make her a good third-party member or call for a situation where bosses begin to force take their turns. As for Zack, I love the capabilities he has, and I wish it came in an era where both his and Ramza's strength would be justified. Speaking of Ramza, I have his full kit and I'll be greening him faster than you can say tactics. As for Steiner and Reigns, I love the fact that he gives with his LD what Cryo gives with her EX, as that was awesome to take advantage of in early BT era when Cryo got her LD. But I've not been a smart good boy with my resources, so I'll toss 100 tickets and see what happens. Hopefully be strong and stick to that if I don't get them then, or in the free pull. Yes, there are free pulls across all of these banners and all of Zack's batch as well, so for those of you who are as excited for Zack BT as many others, myself included, perhaps don't go in straight away with the tokens. Well, there are other banners coming. We know of at least 2 others, one of which is going to be Enacro. The other one is unknown, but probably Charlotta. So hold fire, because the last thing you want to do, I say this every time it happens, and someone always messages me, don't go pulling for it or pitying it and pulling it for free on the next banner. You will regret it. And then Protomega says tickets till I see Rydia as I'm bluing her and finally obtaining an Ultima weapon, which will be her whip, until they let us swap out our resources for another. I love that she's a sort of tank, which I kind of need at the C90 level, and her Imperial Enchanting will greatly help the party hit through walls. If I get Zack LDLBT, great, but not chasing him as I want to use my current C90 greens some more before snow. Ramza green is awfully tempting though. It's interesting that to see people that aren't after Zack all that much, but I can see where you're coming from. If you like Snow a lot, he's not that far away either. And while Zack is really powerful, he's not mandatory by any means. And I'm honestly interested as to why we haven't had the Ultima resource swap yet, because I'd quite like it because I made a bit of a mess up on my second staff Ultima weapon that should have been an Awakening, but I made a mess up, and we'll just leave it at that. But it's nice to see people being so excited for Rydia. Cobalt Zork says I'll be using some tickets for Rydia, probably a fair few as there'll be a lot to spend. She doesn't look necessary from what I've heard of the fights ahead. Her set weakness shtick doesn't ever really beat seem needed, but she looks kind of fun to play. Ramza Trey's an easy skip. I'm only risking Ramza's BT, and I won't be tokening that because I have Garnet. People will say Garnet doesn't make Ramza irrelevant, which is true, but she does make him comparatively less appealing. Conversely, if they released it the other way around, Ramza would make Garnet less appealing. Could I run them together? Yes. Do I want to forego other BTs I want to token to achieve that? No. If I had his BT, I'd green it, but unless I get lucky on future banners like Snow or Laguna, I'm not going to token him anytime soon. Steiner's going to get a few tickets, he's got some good utility, and I like 9, which will push the boat out. Again, not needed, but kind of want. Which is kind of this era in a nutshell, really. Trying to maximize pulling within sensible restraints to give myself a fair chance of getting Zack's BT. That's kind of where I am with it in terms of pulling. Like, I don't need anything here, but I want Zack's BT, so I would like to pull on something, so I guess I'll pull on whatever's available. But yeah, this era in a nutshell is very much just play whatever you want. Although I will say the Cloudy with a Chance of Squall, Lufenia Plus, did throw me for a loop, but I really enjoyed the challenge that came out of that. More of that, please. And yeah, that's going to be it from our comments. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts with us. Some very sort of conflicting thoughts across the board today, so let me know what you think in the comments below. So now, finally, let's ask the question of whether we should be pulling for any of these characters. So, in the case of the BT units, if you have them, you green them. There is just no two ways about it. Both Zack and Ramza are exceptional wielders of their BT pluses, with both of them providing both bravery and HP damage caps, massive ones in the case of Ramza, and also churning out bizarrely large amounts of damage considering that Ramza is an aura bot and Zack is a tank. And, you know, that being aside, Zack's survivability is crazy. The amount he enables for your party by having his BT active means that you can kind of just roll your face against most things, and unless it's a Lufenia orb that insta-kills you, you're probably gonna be fine. And then Ramza provides so much efficiency with his package that he's straight up hard to ignore. Healing, instant break, free turns, regens, damage, no sleep, club, bus, another club, plane, next place, no sleep, no fear, nobody believed in me. Tell me if you get that reference. He's just really, really good. Rydia is nice. Like, the blink effect I think is very cool, particularly for enemies that like to jump turns. Because when enemies tend to jump turns, certainly if the whole Cloudy with a Chance of Squall is anything to go by, they tend to cleanse their debuffs when they do that. So having blink being a buff means that you're always going to be safe if you've got that. It's got limited uses. It's not like Edge with his EX where it's reusable, but it is something that's going to stick until it leaves. So that's a really nice plus in favour of Rydia. And that's going to be the main reason you pull for her. She's not a terrible like magic damage dealer. She's got defense ignoring and her EX and her LD, and she's got this water weak debuff, which is cute, but in like further research, it's not as useful as it first appears. And certainly when we have Garnet available, and I know that this is a broken record at this point, but if you have her, then a lot of these characters are probably not going to be as appealing, particularly the LD only ones. Trey's damage though is considerably higher. I actually really like Trey. I've always really liked Trey. He has a lot of off-turn damage that appeals to players of that kind, particularly in combination with stuff like Rydia's Blink or Auron or Beatrix or any kind of off-turn damage dealer. Multiplying those off-turn damage dealing capabilities tends to make them significantly stronger. And in terms of actually doing the off-turn stuff, you don't get much better than Trey. And he's always hitting for weakness damage now. His raining arrows is full AoE damage. He's got double HP dumps on his fire shield debuff. There's lots of really nice things with it. Now, Sid Reigns is what he's always been, which is a monster launcher. He does a lot of turn manipulation, and his LD call is honestly one of the biggest things that I find I use him for. I actually didn't use him as much in my main party as I thought I would, but the fact that he's lasted this long, and you could for a lot of events, and the fact that he continues to be useful with minimal changes goes to show quite how good he is. And then Steiner may not look like much on paper, and probably won't for a lot of players, myself included, but I do think that he has a unique pool of buffs that he provides. Like, he has a bit of Beatrix with the defense and a bit of wall. The battery's there, but it's like Cryo-esque. It's a nice combination of things to add up together. And because it's a set value, it's just a nice thing for your entire party to benefit from. And having Brave gains and HP damage up on one character, as we've seen with other characters in the past, does tend to be pretty good. However, Very few LD-only characters are particularly exciting at this point, unless they are being used for their call abilities. That's not to say that they're not exciting at all, but because BT effects are so powerful now and LD calls are so powerful now, role coverage isn't really that big a deal. And when you've got 3 characters like Zack, Ramza and Garnet running around, the chances are you are probably going to see 2 out of 3 of those characters in a lot of team compositions going forward, because they're just that good for what they do. And the HP damage cap up that's presented by multiples of those characters is staggering. The fact that they cover so much all at once is staggering. I just hope that we see a little bit more variation in friend units, like maybe a few Ramzas here, because I don't know about you, but mine has been completely top to bottom Garnet for the longest time, and it would be nice to see it switch up a bit. But at the end of the day, should you pull for these guys? Yes, you should. If you have them already, you green them, no questions asked. If you have Garnet, you don't have to, but that doesn't stop them from being really good. So that is going to be all for today's video, and I will probably post my video for my Clear of Cloudy with a Chance of Squall later in the week before I go away. And obviously, as I said earlier in the video, and I'm sure it's a broken record, but I don't want people to go, no, you didn't say anything when you were going anywhere. I'm not going to be here all of next week, possibly on the Friday. It depends on how I'm feeling at the time, because I am going to be taking a little bit of a step back to kind of take stock of the way everything is. I think I've been kind of flailing around like a madman trying to figure out what I want with my channel and where I'm going with it. But I would love to hear from you guys, the things that you like about this channel, the things that maybe you think could be improved. Do you like the way that I present my Opera Omnia videos now, where it's once a week for each of the Should You Pulls, or do you prefer the old way of doing it, where I did it before? The reason that I stopped doing it like quite so often is because I didn't want any other videos that I made to get completely snowed under. But I do also understand that if this is the main game that my channel is focused on, then I have to be okay with that, and that's, you know, I could slowly progress towards other things. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be disrespectful to the audience that I've built up over the course of the last couple of years, and I'm very grateful to have anything that I have. So I just want to hear from you guys as to where do you think things stand with the channel? Like, where would you like to see things go? I have a lot of plans going forward. I did have some plans for new logos and stuff, but I've come under some realizations that maybe they won't work out as well as I would have liked them to for copyright purposes more than anything. But yeah, I kind of just want to hear from you guys over the next week. Let me know in the comments below as well, of course, whether you're going to be pulling for Zack, Ramza, Trey, Rydia, Sid Reigns, or Steiner. And that's going to be it from me. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications. And I will see you guys next time. So have a really lovely week, everybody, and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye now. Yeah.